The Play Absolutely podcast with Dr. Sue Jennings and Dr. Andy Hickson. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Play Absolutely podcast. Hi Sue, how are you doing?
Hi, Andy. I'm doing fine. Good to be back.
Good to be back. Yes, I notice you still have some bandage plaster covering on the end of your nose
I
from
know
the operation. How is that?
it's still a bit sore. I've got to protect
Mm-hmm.
it.
Okay.
I feel that bit embarrassed, but what can I do about it?
Wow, what can you do? Yeah, so you've got a
Mm,
plaster.
I was thinking of maybe I could draw on the plaster, but I think that would make it more noticeable.
Or maybe you could get you one of those fake noses, a Pinocchio nose,
Hmm.
just to play with. But
But it shouldn't be for much longer.
okay, well, you're at least you're not talking through your nose, so you're not sounding really, really nasal, which is
Mm.
good. Yeah. So, wow. What have you been playing with? Hopefully not your nose to make it worse, but what have you been doing as regards play this week since our last podcast?
Well, interesting. I've been putting together a minimalist play kit
Oh,
to sort of, if people have got a low budget or not got access to toys and materials, what would be the minimal amount of stuff really
right.
to have? And it's interesting actually to really play how little you do need.
Mm.
Whether you've got the saucepans in the kitchen cupboard or wooden spoons, things you would already have in your house,
Or in the garden. Just a
in the
stick they
garden,
used to play with.
outdoors. Yeah, even using, the blanket to play peekaboo with and things like that. There's a
Yeah.
lot around, and I think maybe we ought to challenge people who look at our podcast to look around them in their environment and think, what is there here that I could play with?
Well, challenge me because I'm looking. I mean, you can't see it, but I'm at my desk and I have a lot of things, and I think I could probably pick up anything on my desk
Mm.
and be able to play with it.
Mm.
There's a famous Auguste Boal, who I know you're aware, who developed the Theatre of the Oppressed.
Mm.
May he rest in peace. One famous game of his was What's in a Bottle, and it was literally an empty bottle, an empty plastic bottle, and you were tasked with what's in a bottle. So you would just use this bottle, this empty bottle, and you would mime it as something. You put it on your head, it becomes a hat. You hold it like this, it becomes a bat, and so on and so on. It could be so many different things. So even what you pick up to play with doesn't have to be the thing that it actually is. It could be something else.
Mm.
Yeah. So.
And of course, that all started with that very old drama game of changing the object, where you'd sit in a circle and pass round something like a stick, a drumstick, for example.
Right. Yeah.
And each person had to change it into something else.
Mm.
And you'd be near the end of the circle and see everybody using it as a thing you were going to use it with before you do. So by the end,
No, I think it's something else. Yeah. But that's a great thing about improvisation is, I mean, that really, that kind of again helps with improvisation because what we do in life, I think generally most people, is because we don't want to embarrass ourselves, is that in many situations, particularly in conversations and so on, part of what you're doing is thinking what you're going to say or what you're going to contribute next, rather than fully engaging in somebody else's conversation or fully engaging in an activity. And I think that's very blocking. Whereas if you're trained in improvisation, you allow yourself to fully immerse within a dialogue, a conversation, an activity. And then when it's your turn, you just let yourself kind of unfiltered make your contribution, add your word. And it's surprising how, once you're able to do it, how freeing that is. And it's always there.
indeed.
It's always inside you. You're always able to contribute something. But I think people are often scared to say the wrong thing, or maybe to expose some character trait or personality trait about themselves, which is why people don't like improvising.
Well, I remember a group that were wanting to demonstrate improvisation in this
Right.
little theatre, in this teaching complex. It was a college. And they had one or two themes that they would chuck out at the group, and the group had to react.
Yeah.
And you could tell that one or two people in the group had set pieces,
Yeah.
that it wasn't actually improvisation. And there was one in particular who was near the front of the group, near the front of the stage, therefore. And he'd obviously done his set piece, and you got the impression that previously he would have got a laugh from the audience at it.
Right.
And when he didn't get a laugh, he repeated it.
Threw him.
So it somehow lost all credibility of being an improvisation, which is unfortunate. But you're right. People get nervous that they won't think of something, so they have their own set pieces tucked away and hope to be able to use them.
It's a great shame, really, because we miss out on a lot of things in conversation because half the time we're not really listening. We're not what we call actively listening. You could be having a deep, meaningful conversation with somebody because, you want to think, right, I need to say the most important thing about this conversation or be really kind of, I don't know, poignant or memorable or something. But it's just about us being or unusual, but about us making a contribution rather than listening to maybe something new that we're not sure about or yeah. It's a shame, but such is life. Okay,
I mean,
so
improvisation, just to remember that improvisation is being able to be playful.
Yes.
In essence, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Playing with an idea or a shape or a word or whatever it is. And playfulness is improvised. It's spontaneous in the moment.
Being able to accept what people offer you.
And sometimes we have to improvise if there's an emergency, if something's gone wrong. And there always used to be the old joke when cars used to have fan belts.
Right, can I just stop you a sec? You've moved your mic and gone very loud. Can you just move your mic down?
Is that better? But in the olden days, people used to joke about asking women to take off their tights so they could improvise a fan belt.
Right, a fan belt, yeah.
So anything in the news this time, Andy?
So, yes, let's go to this week in the news. Okay, so we've got two stories again. From England, it appears that the government has been listening to our moans about the lack of play spaces for children. In a written ministerial statement this month, the government said they are confirming £18 million for playground investment in poorer communities, aimed at places with the highest levels of child poverty and the lowest quality of playgrounds. The statement explicitly says the goal is to build and restore play equipment where local playgrounds have fallen into disrepair or disappeared. Now, this story shows for me that play deprivation is not just about family choices or screens, but about public infrastructure and who gets quality space. Schools often end up compensating for a lack of community play space, and if a child has nowhere worth playing, that is not a private problem, it is a public policy problem. Now, from abroad, we go to Turkey, where Reuters has a story that Ankara launched an interactive baby theatre for toddlers. The Anadolu agency reports that Turkish state theatres launched a baby theatre project in Ankara with a wordless interactive performance for children aged roughly 1 to 3 years old, where toddlers and mothers engage directly with performers in a specially arranged stage environment. This is a strong example of theatre moving closer to early play experience rather than expecting very young children to sit still and consume a performance passively. It is relational, sensory, and interactive, and this suggests a model where performance is not separate from play, but becomes a scaffold for attachment, curiosity, and shared embodied experience. Everything we like in the Play Absolutely podcast. That's this week's play in the news.
Great.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, the point being that I keep making to those working with women who are pregnant or newborn mothers and so on, that the early relationship, the attachment relationship, is a performance.
Okay.
Yeah, the baby makes a sound and mum will clap and smile, so the baby will do it again, and then mum will do something and the baby will roar with laughter and later on learn to clap their hands. That mother and baby during the early time are performing for each other. And that's a very important part of child development.
So is the baby...
Sorry?
Oh, sorry to interrupt. So would you say at this age that the baby is performing as well?
Yes. The baby is learning to perform.
Okay. So
and
when does a baby
to start with, it's
know...
imitation.
Okay.
You know, the baby will make a noise, say, and mum will copy it.
Right.
And then mum will make maybe another noise or a gesture, and the baby will try to copy it. But it's like a little discovery journey that they're performing and affirming each other at the same time. Because clapping after the baby's made a noise is affirmation of something the baby's doing.
Wow. Okay.
Of course, what we can find, and this is something I think needs a lot of discussion, is that once a child gets to 1 or 2 years, performance can be discouraged. Adults will say, stop showing off.
Yes.
Or stop messing about. You know, just sit down and be quiet. Sit down and eat your dinner, and so on. And I think for some children this is very confusing, because for that whole first year, them performing has been affirmed, and now suddenly they're not supposed to do that. So they're supposed to sit still. Whereas maybe a performance needs modifying depending on the appropriateness of the space.
So how do you think, if a parent, doesn't want their child to sort of, I don't know, grow up as a narcissist and just care about themselves and so on, but still wants them to have a sort of a creative and improvisational and performative way of being, how can a parent help when that line, because it's a blurred line, isn't it? So stop the performance, or not stop the performance, but to
I
sort
think
of
it's
stop.
something that once a child gets to 1 or 2 years old, one's quite capable of having a discussion with a child.
Too.
And that discussion is around space, of what is appropriate in what space.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same with where do we eat our dinner?
Right.
You sit at the table to eat your dinner. You don't sit on the floor in the playroom to eat your dinner.
Right. So rather than sort of say, stop messing about, it's like, okay, we're at the table, we're eating dinner now. So let's finish dinner and then we can do a bit of messing about afterwards, or we can carry on the playful game afterwards.
So I think there's a whole load of issues around appropriate space, and the same as public space and private space.
Right. Jungle space and village space.
And you don't play with certain things when you go to grandma's house.
Or you can't play with that here. You can't play with that in your own house. You can only play with that at grandma's house.
and so
We
on.
don't let you do that, but Grandma does. So wait till you're there.
Because I think a lot of for children about growing up is learning not to be stopped doing things, but learning about what is appropriate and where.
Right.
Because we do some NDP exercises all about what is private space, what is personal space, what is family space, and what is open space.
Hmm. So last week in the pod, we talked briefly about sort of dirt and misplaced matter, sort of, off ground, with it, and on the ground and so on. So a phrase that we both like is misplaced matter. So, something can be rubbish in one environment, but not rubbish in another. A pile of earth, for example, rubbish in the house, but not on the ground outside. What about if we use that term for play, misplaced play?
That's a good thought.
Hmm.
I
So
mean,
play in one environment, but
yes,
not play in another.
but we might still be playful in our heads,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
even if we sit still in class to
But can you
allow our,
think of
our brain.
some activities that that is play? So it's that's kind of related to what you're saying already, isn't it? In that when parents might stop playful thing, it's not that they're trying to stop the play. It's misplaced play. Don't do it. Don't play with your food. Don't do that thing at the dinner table because we're eating food, but we can carry on doing it in the playroom or in a different space. Misplaced play.
I mean, a typical example is when a child starts to play with a ball in a sitting room, and
Okay.
initially nobody says anything till something gets knocked over or broken,
Mm,
and that awful moment when there's been a nasty outcome to you trying to be playful with a ball.
yes. Yes.
But I mean, talking about spaces, I will recount a very embarrassing situation that happened to me when I was 4 years old.
Okay.
And I and my older sister and my mother and father all went to the school where my two brothers went to hear a concert.
Hmm.
The school orchestra was quite well known and it was playing a concert. And we were all sitting there near the front listening to this concert. And I was sitting on my mother's knee and obviously getting restless and squirming about. And just as the music went rather quiet, I said in a rather penetrating voice, "Mummy, can we have fish and chips for supper tonight?" And everybody in that hall heard it. And everybody was trying to suppress laughter when this very serious orchestra was playing away. And oh, did I have it as trouble when we got home. My parents were so cross. My brothers were embarrassed. What would they mates say to them when they went to school the next day?
Dear.
My older sister just said I was playing naughty because they wouldn't be allowed to have fish and chips again. And for one 4-year-old child saying one phrase in the wrong space, the impact on me from all these other people was enormous.
Wow. I mean, that contrast with kind of a similar story, I'm sure you'll remember this, when you took all of us, your 3 children, to the theatre to watch a performance of Hair, a very old sort of hippie
That's right,
type
yes.
musical.
Yeah.
And one point in the performance, I mean, there's a naked scene, and there's a man naked, I remember, on stage at some point. And my youngest sibling, who I think was 4 or 5 at the time, so a very similar age, as soon as the naked person left the stage, I don't think he stood up, but in a very loud voice, he said, "Is that the only naked bit we're going to see?" Everybody heard, looked at us. But instead of admonishing him, we laughed, other people laughed, and it's kind of been a family joke ever since. It's not something that anybody was told off about, even though it was slightly embarrassing. It was just a very funny episode. Yeah, so
Well,
how you deal with it?
as we were coming into that show, the guy on the door showing us to our seats looked at me and looked at you three and said, "Madam, this is not a children's show."
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Well,
Yes, hair at the time was considered very shocking, wasn't it?
yeah, it's very risque, I think. So let's just sort of back to play. I mean, just something I've been thinking of is that we're both really, really into play. Yeah, we love play. I've been brought up on play. Now, but it's not always the same. So both of us have similar things in terms of theatre and performance and creativity and so on. But one area we kind of diverge is play, as in games such as board games. I know you like an occasional card game, but most board games, for example, sort of Catan and Imperial Settlers and many other, there's Magic the Gathering. I mean, games that I love to play, but they're organized play, usually with other people. I mean, I can play. I had a game, a day of games the other day, and me and a couple of friends, we spent 8 or 9 hours straight playing board games and card games and so on, and we had great fun. But for you, that wouldn't be so much fun, would it? What do you think is one of the differences between those different kinds of play?
Now that's very interesting you say that, because I get very anxious during board games. I get anxious I'm not going to really understand it.
Okay.
I think some of this comes from family stereotyping about girls not understanding things, or being told, "Oh, it's too complicated for you, don't worry about it," sort of attitude.
Okay.
And whereas I can go ahead and play a game of Snap with cards, or play Snakes and Ladders as a board game, I can more or less get by with chess, which is much more complicated. But getting into the complicated card games, and people said, "Don't you ever play bridge?" Well, I've never understood bridge in my life. That type of thing. And it's something tied up, and it's interesting you should raise this, because it's something I'm puzzling over myself, because I think it's similar to avoiding complicated sports.
Okay.
It's the same type of thing of not quite understanding, therefore I'll get it wrong.
Right. So you're frightened of getting things wrong.
And of course, as a child, there were certain sports that in those days parents could say, "No, girls shouldn't be doing that." I mean, I often wonder now what my parents would make of female rugby teams, football teams, and everything else. But even hockey, I was not allowed to do at school. I was banned from it by my parents.
Wow.
And the staff made life as miserable as possible for me during games periods when the other people were playing hockey.
But, so on that, and I understand what you're saying there, but also sort of one of the principles of neurodramatic play is this idea of taking risks. And do you not feel then as an adult, you've moved your mic up, by the way, so you need to move it back down. So do you not feel as an adult that you want to take risks in games that you haven't played? Different styles of games that can be quite complicated in the beginning, but once you've got the principles of certain competitive board games, for example, although a new game, you need to learn new rules. Once you've got the principles of that gameplay, learning the new rules is not automatic, but is a lot easier.
Well, maybe that will come. I mean, I've just made my first step in terms of taking a risk with technology.
Yes, yeah, we talked about that with our friend Emmanuel on a previous podcast.
And I'm actually going to get myself a smartphone,
Mm.
which everybody is going to be astounded at because they've just got so used to me not being available on a mobile phone and not knowing how to text people. And I've decided that this is my next risk. So perhaps that'll lead to bridge afterwards, Andy.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, you need to. I remember before I learnt bridge, so I do know how to play bridge. I learnt whist. I think that's the beginning, and then on to bridge. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Well, I love my board games. My favourites are not for you, because I know you won't have heard of these games, but for any of the viewers, Catan. Which is an amazing game with lots of different expansions as well. And Magic the Gathering, again, lots of different sort of types of expansions and different types
Monopoly
of
I
gameplay.
play.
Monopoly, funny. We used to play Monopoly as a child, but as a game experience now, for me, that's one of the worst games you can play.
Why?
It's the main thing is the end game to Monopoly is always the same. Is that, you've got your 4 players playing. Somebody has monopolized the board and is gathering in the resources. You know they're going to win, but you kind of eke out the game ending by not charging the full rent when people land on your properties. You just say, give me this or give me that. So you just slow it right down. You know that's there's no way to change it. It just becomes really boring then. I mean, if I can play Monopoly with a mediocre Monopoly player, and just knowing the principles of what to do in the beginning, I can almost guarantee a win. And if you play with 4 people that really know how to play the game, then it's all down to the luck of the dice as well, I think. Yeah. So,
well, there you go. I never was any good with money, so.
Well, you could also say it teaches you about capitalism, I suppose, as well, doesn't it? And money. Yeah, maybe it does teach you about money. Yeah.
Well, apparently
I'll have to
some
think
schools
about
are
that.
doing that now. They're having
Oh, really?
play banks where children actually learn about banking and going to and online accounts.
Yes, I mean, there are a lot of online games. I'm not sure Monopoly is one of them, but I'm wondering whether that could be a way to teach, or does it just teach you about capitalism and trying to buy everything up before everybody else and charge them exorbitant rents? I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So, bearing in mind your nose, I was thinking of different jokes I could crack about your nose. You have a nose for play, don't you? Sorry. So bearing that in mind, we'll make this episode very slightly shorter. Have you got anything for this episode that you'd like to say about play? Anything about the news stories or anything else before we draw it to a close?
Well, I don't want to talk about my nose, no.
I know
The
you
trouble
don't.
is that when somebody sees something, that's the only thing they find themselves talking about.
I know.
But really harking back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, thinking about the play materials we can make, I think is an important topic. That we can make a shaker by having a coffee tin that's now empty and putting some beans inside it and making sure it's really stuck down with masking tape so it doesn't all fly over the room
Mm.
We don't have to buy shakers from Amazon off the internet and so on. And I think that part of improvisation, which is also good ecology in terms of recycling stuff,
Yeah.
reusing stuff, is a
Mm.
very good way of helping children to be playful, to make something even before they use it. So I'm into coffee tins as shakers at the moment.
Well, to be honest, Sue, I mean, that's something you've carried with you throughout your life. I'm lucky enough to have a spare room in my house, which we now call a music room. So it has lots of musical instruments in it. One of the things in it is a shaker made out of an old plastic pot. And it's a shaker that I made before, well, certainly before I was a teenager at one of your workshops for special needs children, and you got us all making shakers with lentils, I believe, is inside it,
Mm,
and it is still in my music room, so it's lasted many years.
amazing.
Yeah, still there. Yeah. Okay. Well, so did you want to say any more on that, or it's just that
Well,
it's important and maybe
in
come up with
future
some
weeks, I'll
recipes for
think about
future?
other instruments and things we can make to
Okay.
help with play. But I really wanted, because it's
Mm.
one of the simplest ones, to emphasize the shakers.
Well, on that, and I know we touched upon this, I think, in the last podcast when we talked about the rain sticks. We will imminently be going to pay another visit to our Temi Art friends and family in the jungle in Malaysia. While there, I'm going to try and make a rain stick out of some bamboo. Now, we can maybe do that together. I haven't fully worked out how I'm going to do it yet, but we'll try and film it. And if we're able to and successful, or maybe even if it's unsuccessful, we'll show a clip on one of our future podcasts of that being made.
Great.
So that brings us to the final segment of all our pods. If people are feeling a little bit anxious at the moment, or just feeling the blues, we suggest some playful activities that you can do to help you feel a little bit better. So what have you got for us this week, Sue?
Well, having made your shaker, the thing with a shaker, you can just sit quietly and beat out a nice rhythm.
Hmm.
And then try to locate your own heartbeat and see if you can reproduce your heartbeat with your shaker.
Hmm.
It's very, very soothing.
Nice. I like it. Okay, well, my suggestion this week, again, I mean, people have done lots of different types of versions of this, is to get an old box, small box, like a shoebox, something like that, even smaller if you like. Cut a little slit, like a little mini letterbox in it. You can decorate it if you want, but you don't have to. And then you use that as your worry box. So any worries you have, concerns, anxieties, write them on a little piece of paper, post them in your worry box. And that will store away all of your worries and concerns. Now, you've got them as a twofold thing there. So you can save it for later. You can open it up. And if you really want to feel depressed and anxious, you read all your worries to bring them back. Or you can dispose of them in a variety of different ways, including, cutting them up, burn them, or something else. So the worry box. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not sure if our viewers can hear a ringing, but there is a ringing going on at the moment. So with that in mind, we'll draw this episode to a close. Please, if you've enjoyed the episode, give us a like, subscribe to the channel. It really helps the algorithm. And look forward to seeing you on the next pod. So I will end with saying, don't forget to play.
No, keep playing.
Keep playing. Okay. And bye for now.